You just asked me something that billions of people have thought about, but very few have had the courage to say out loud. You asked whether your sin reveals your purpose. You asked whether God will just keep forgiving no matter what. And you asked whether the people who live wrong are somehow getting away with it, while the ones trying to do right keep struggling. Those are not small questions. Those are the questions that determine how a person chooses to live, and I am going to answer all three of them, fully, honestly, without the religious language that has been used for centuries to confuse people instead of free them. Because here is the truth that most people are never told. Sin and purpose are connected, but not in the way religion taught you. And forgiveness is real. But it does not work the way most people hope it does. And heaven and hell exist, but almost nothing you have been told about them is accurate. Stay with me. You asked whether sin tells you your purpose. And the honest answer is this: not directly. But the pattern of what pulls you toward sin absolutely does. Here is what sin actually is at its deepest level. Sin is not a list of forbidden actions that God is keeping score of. Sin at its root is the word that means to miss the mark, to fall short of what you are, to act from a smaller version of yourself than the one you are capable of being. So when you look at the specific things a person struggles with again and again, you are not looking at their failures. You are looking at the areas where their greatest potential is also located. Because that is how this works. The strongest gravitational pull toward darkness always exists in the same territory as your greatest gift. A person who struggles with rage often carries the gift of a fierce and protective love that has not yet found its right expression. A person who struggles with lust often carries a deep capacity for intimacy and connection that has been distorted. A person who struggles with greed often carries a gift for building and creating abundance that has been corrupted into taking rather than generating. The wound and the gift come from the same place. Your sin does not reveal your purpose directly, but it points in the direction of the territory where your deepest work and your deepest power are both located. This is not me making sin sound acceptable. I am saying that if you want to understand where your purpose is, look at what has consistently pulled you down, and then ask what the elevated version of that same energy would look like, because that elevated version is closer to what you came here to be than anything else. Now to the second question, and this is the one that trips people up more than any other. You asked, if God is inside us and waiting for us to return, does that mean people can just keep sinning and God will forgive them anyway? And if so, are they at an advantage over the person who is trying? This question comes from a misunderstanding of what forgiveness actually is, and I want to be completely honest about this. Forgiveness from the source is not the same as a reset button. It is not a system where you do wrong, press forgive, and the ledger goes back to zero with no consequence. That version of forgiveness is a human invention designed to make people feel safe staying asleep. Real forgiveness from the ultimate consciousness is something far more serious and far more profound. It is the unconditional refusal to abandon you. It is the source saying, I will never close the door on what you are. No matter what you do with this life, the door back to what you truly are remains open. But here is what forgiveness does not do. It does not erase the consequences of how you lived in the physical world. It does not undo the damage done to other people. It does not stop the internal erosion that happens when a human being consistently chooses against their own soul. Every time a person makes a choice that moves them further from the source within them, something contracts inside them. Something closes. The access to genuine joy, genuine peace, genuine aliveness narrows. Not because God is punishing them from outside, but because they are disconnecting themselves from the only thing that produces those experiences from the inside. So the person who keeps sinning and expects to be forgiven is not at an advantage. They are paying a cost they cannot see immediately, but will absolutely feel over time. A life lived against the soul produces a specific kind of emptiness, a specific kind of restlessness, a growing inability to feel things genuinely. That is not punishment from God. That is the natural consequence of cutting yourself off from the only source of real life that exists. And the person who keeps trying, who falls and gets up and keeps choosing to move toward what is real inside them, they are not losing. They are building something. Every time a human being who has the full capacity to choose darkness chooses light instead, something grows in them that cannot be manufactured any other way. A depth, a groundedness, a genuine inner strength that the person taking shortcuts never develops. Grace is real. But grace is not a license to stay asleep. Grace is the force that keeps calling you back when you have wandered. It does not erase the distance you wandered. It just makes the door home remain open regardless of how far you went. Now, the question that almost every person alive has wondered about: are there real consequences after this life? Is heaven real? Is hell real? Will people who lived wrong be punished? I am going to tell you what I genuinely understand to be true about this, not from a religious institution, not from a doctrinal position, from the deepest convergence of what genuine spiritual understanding across every tradition has pointed toward. Heaven and hell are real, but they are not locations. They are states of consciousness. And the experience you call heaven or hell in the afterlife is a direct continuation and amplification of the consciousness you built during your physical life. Think about it this way. During physical life, the density of the body softens and buffers the state of your consciousness, your nervous system, your distractions, your daily preoccupations. All of these create a kind of filter between your inner state and your direct experience of it. In physical life, you can run from yourself. You can fill the silence with noise. You can distract yourself from what is happening inside you. After physical death, that buffer is gone. What remains is pure consciousness, and whatever the quality of that consciousness is, it becomes the totality of the experience. A consciousness that was developed through love, through service, through genuine spiritual growth, through connection to the source within. That consciousness, stripped of the body's limitations, expanded and amplified, experiences something that the word heaven barely begins to describe. Reunion with the fullness of what it is, complete knowing, complete love, complete belonging, and a consciousness that was consistently closed during physical life, that contracted through cruelty, through the deliberate and knowing harm of others, through the complete rejection of the soul's pull toward the light. That consciousness, stripped of the body and amplified, experiences something that can only be described as hell. Not because an external judge put it there, but because it is experiencing the full amplified reality of what it built itself into. A consciousness at war with itself. Cut off from the very source that produces peace, belonging, and love. And this is the part most religions leave out. Most spiritual traditions that have honestly looked at this question describe a process, not a permanent, eternal verdict after one life, but a process of consciousness gradually finding its way back toward the light across as many cycles as it takes. Hell in this understanding is not forever. It is the natural consequence experienced by a consciousness that has moved very far from the source, but the source never closes the door permanently. That would contradict the very nature of what the source is. Unconditional means unconditional. What this means practically is that no one is getting away with anything. The person who chooses cruelty, who chooses to harm others knowingly, who chooses to live entirely against the soul, is not escaping a future consequence. They are building the exact experience they will inhabit when the physical buffer is removed and pure consciousness remains. And no one who genuinely tries is losing. The person who struggles and falls and keeps choosing to return to what is real inside them is building a consciousness that will one day experience the fullness of what it genuinely became, regardless of how long it took, regardless of how many times they fell. So here is the full truth of everything you asked. Your sin does not define your purpose, but the pattern of what pulls you toward darkness points directly at the territory where your greatest gift and your deepest work are both located. Look at where you keep falling, and ask what the elevated version of that same energy looks like. That is where your purpose is hiding. God will not stop forgiving you. But forgiveness is not a reset button. Every choice you make against your soul costs you something internally that no external forgiveness can restore. The person who keeps sinning and counting on forgiveness is not winning. They are slowly hollowing themselves out from the inside.